Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network. 'Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven. A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at UBNradio.com.
I can't hear a thing.
This is my mom's favorite song. You love my mom.
I love your mother and your father.
Dreaming.
Hello?
Don't worry, we're coming to you. Thank you very much, everybody. And Kurt, thank you for the beautiful Christmas music. Got a really large studio audience in here with us today, as you can hear them. Welcome, everybody, for another fun edition of What's Up with Kobylt and Friends. We are hot into the holiday season, and to join me in studio today, I've got a very, very dear friend of mine. His name is Ken Carlson. Some applause from the audience, please.
Wow. Thank you.
Thank you. Please. And he will be talking to us about a film that he produced, directed, wrote. He pretty much did everything, called The Heart of Nuba. And I say The Heart of Nuba because you all need to see this film because there's so much heart into it. And it's based on a story, a personal story of someone that you know and went to college with.
Correct.
Who was a physician, and he's working to help the people of Nuba, which is a small village in the southern section of Sudan, and the atrocities that go on there. And your friend, who is helping these people at a hospital, we'll get into all that later, but it's an incredible story and a really moving film and an important film. But first, on the phone, we have an incredible guy. His name is Scott Farris. Scott, thanks for being here, author.
Thanks, Jenny.
I got to tell you, every week we get a larger studio audience in here, right? Anyway, Scott was a UPI bureau chief, a political columnist. He wrote the book Almost President, Men Who Lost the Race But Changed the Nation. You also wrote Kennedy and Reagan, Why Legacies Endure. And your latest book, I've got film on my mind.
Soon to be a film.
You know what, John, my husband,
I
know my husband who's a talk show host here in town, he was going through a lot of this with me last night, and he goes, this book has got to be a film. Ken, there's something in this for you.
Scott, you and I need to speak.
I'm telling you, there's something here. So I'll be the broker here. And your latest book, Inga, it is about President Kennedy's great love. Hitler called her a perfect beauty, and she was also, I believe, his lover as well. How do you get this job?
Wow.
Where you're Kennedy's lover, you're Hitler's lover. J. Edgar Hoover, however, had her...
not his lover.
Not his lover. Who would want that, right?
My.
I got to say, that's a job, not for me. Sorry, but I have to say. No, she just said, no, I'll stop there. But J. Edgar Hoover considered her a prime suspect, a spy. We don't really know. She was a Hollywood gossip columnist, a Miss Denmark, and she was one hell of an interesting woman. So... what motivated you to write about her? I've never even heard about Inga. How do you say her last name? Arvad?
Arvad. Inga Arvad, yeah. Well, it was the second book I wrote about Kennedy and Reagan, and I was doing research on Kennedy. And actually, in most of the Kennedy biographies, they have a little bit about Inga. And a lot of times they'll note that this woman had the most incredible life. Somebody ought to do a book about her. So I'm not that slow-witted. I finally said, okay, I'll write a book about her. And she's just an amazing figure. She was a very seminal figure in Jack Kennedy's life. In fact, part of the book argues that she was as important as anybody in putting Jack Kennedy on the path to the White House. We think about Jack Kennedy now as sort of this witty, urbane, handsome guy with everything together back in 1960. But when he and Inga had their romance at the beginning of World War II, he was a skinny, disheveled, insecure guy. And she gave him the confidence to tell his family that he wanted a political career like his older brother Joe was being groomed for. And then, of course, their romance was so scandalous because she was a suspected Nazi spy that put in motion a series of events that put Kennedy in the South Pacific, where he became a war hero.
Right.
And then the reporter who publicized his heroics when he came back to the States was Inga Arvad. So she had the constant sort of interweaving of her life with Jack Kennedy's and put him on the trajectory to the White House.
And he really loved her, apparently, but the family was like, forget about it. You're not going to be going with or marrying I think she was divorced at that time 2 times by then. Is that correct?
She was actually still married at the time.
Oh,
yes.
scandalous. For those times, who would have known?
Unprecedented.
I didn't know this kind of stuff existed back then. I thought it was really like hidden, but wow. So she was.
There is
wow.
a lot of sex in the book, yeah.
Got to read this stuff.
Wow.
But go ahead. So that's right. She was pretty much responsible for what happened to his political career, correct? Because he was almost court-martialed. Isn't that? Did you know about this?
He was.
I did not.
Jack Kennedy. Isn't that correct?
Yes. Well, and he was. I mean, a lot of people, I think, sort of think of Jack Kennedy, I think all he ever had were one-night stands and flings, but he was genuinely in love with Inga. One of the ways we know that is that after Kennedy was shot, and they were going through his papers preparing for the Kennedy Library, they came across a scrapbook where he kept only letters from 4 people: his father, his brother who was killed in the war, his younger sister Kik, who was killed after the war, and Inga. And those were the only people's letters he kind of treasured and kept in a scrapbook. So I think that indicates she was hardly a casual fling. She was in fact the great love of his life.
Wow. And up until his death, was he still in touch with her? Was he still having an affair with her?
No, there's a little twist in the book I won't give away in case anyone wants to read it, but they kept in touch through 1946. And then Inga got married to Tim McCoy, who was a famous movie cowboy. If you're a big fan of Westerns from the 30s and 40s, that name should be pretty familiar. And so at that point, they decided not to continue contacting each other. So according to several of Kennedy's friends, who then sent Inga a condolence letter after his assassination, they said that every time they would see President Kennedy, he would say, "Have you heard from Inga?" as he would say in his Boston accent. So he was thinking about her up until the day he died, pretty much.
That's pretty outstanding. He loved her all this time. So why haven't we heard more about Inga, and what motivated you to do this? I mean, I guess you must have done more and more research on her. Because obviously you're also fascinated about what's going on with the presidencies. You've written about Kennedy before, but now you've done a book on her, on his mistress, on the love of his life.
Yeah, I think, first of all, it's just such an incredible life. It really is, as Ken mentioned, something that Hollywood ought to take a strong look at. I mean, you mentioned some of the things she did, and you really only touched on kind of a couple of highlights. She was an explorer and an anthropologist. She lived with a tribe of headhunters in the East Indies. She was exploring correspondent in Nazi Germany, where she caught Hitler's eye and the eyes of some other Nazis. She didn't actually have a physical relationship with Hitler, but he had a very passionate crush about her. He made her his special guest at the 36th Olympics and gave her some lunches in his honor and gave her some expensive gifts and some exclusive interviews. So she just had this incredible life. But she also, again, sort of reminds us that history a lot of time is just kind of a gossip dignified by age. I mean, there's a lot of history in the book as well. It sounds like it's kind of a scandalous thing, and it is a romance and it's a spy thriller, but there's also some very interesting history about the state of espionage at the beginning of World War II, the view of the world of Hitler in the 1930s, and of course, obviously, how the Kennedy family operated and got into politics. So it's an interesting book on just so many levels. It was a story I just couldn't resist.
Well, you've got a historical book here wrapped in scandal, which makes it so much more interesting in a way. I mean, it's a great read for so many people, for history buffs, for people who are interested in what was going on at the time on a personal level. I love it. And she was also a reporter in Washington, D.C., isn't that correct? Also a Hollywood gossip columnist. She got a lot of jobs. This woman really got around. I mean, I have to say. No, I'm actually serious about that. I mean, she did a lot, and she was also, incredibly beautiful. She was a beautiful woman as well, beautiful and smart.
She was a knockout, and yet, even though you've seen the cover photo, and it's spectacular, but people say that even no photograph ever taken of her did her justice. You had to meet her in person to understand her charm and the energy. In fact, that was one of the things I think that Kennedy was so attracted to, is that she was his equal in charisma. And that is how they met, is that Inga was a columnist in the Washington and the Washington Times Herald, and her job was to interview prominent people coming to Washington to work in the war effort, which J. Edgar Hoover thought was the perfect cover for a Nazi spy. Here's a journalist who's trying to interview all these prominent people in the defense industry, and she has this personal relationship with the Nazis. And she met Kennedy through Kennedy's sister, Kathleen, who everybody called Kik. Kik was also working at the Times Herald. And Kik, even though knowing that Inga was married, and Inga's husband at the time was a famous filmmaker named Paul Fejo, maybe Ken's familiar with his work, but he was off in the Amazon looking for lost cities of the Incas at the time, and he found about a dozen, so that's also a weird and interesting part of the story. But Kik believed that Inga was the only woman she ever met that was Jack's match in terms of intellect and looks and charisma, and so she just felt they had to get together, and so she introduced them at a party, and they hit it off immediately.
I love the spirit of all these people. I love the
Amazing.
spirit that you have, the interest that you have in these stories. I know Ken as my friend and someone who travels a great bit and who writes and who produces films. You're the same way. You get a story and you just need to know more about it. I love this. This is a woman I would have loved to have had at my dinner table, right?
The lust for life.
A lust for life. That's very, very good.
Should have named your book that, Scott. I love that you told a story that has been virtually, seems like, untold. Those are the best, when you find a nugget like this that you can explore and then put forward to people like us. I love it. I look forward to reading it.
Yeah, I do, too. I think it's... Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I just want to say thank you very much. It is fascinating. And one of the great things about the book is, and one of the mysteries of why nobody else has tackled this before, really, is that there is a treasure trove of information. Her FBI file alone is over 1,200 pages and includes verbatim transcripts of conversations she and Jack Kennedy had, because the FBI, when they put their attention on her and thought she was a Nazi spy, in fact, they thought she was the key to the entire Nazi espionage ring in North America. They tapped her phone, they bugged her apartment, they broke into her apartment, they stole her mail, they broke into her mother's apartment and stole her mail. And so we have this incredible, almost day-to-day, hour-to-hour account of her life and her relationship with Jack Kennedy. And then she herself understood what an interesting life she had, and she kept all this correspondence she had from famous people like, Bernard Baruch and famous people, Robert Boothby, who was a candidate for Prime Minister of England, who she also was engaged to briefly. So she kept all these wonderful letters and things from Hollywood. She has a wonderful treasure trove of autograph photos from all the big stars, Humphrey Bogart and Gary Cooper and everybody, all of them writing these very, effusive signatures on the photograph of how much they love Inga, how beautiful she is. And she had taken over the column of Sheila Graham, if people are familiar with Hollywood gossip columnists. Sheila Graham at one point was as big as Hedda Hopper, and Luella Parsons had 20 million readers a week. And for a while, those were Inga's readers.
I was going to say, when I read this last night, 20 million readers a week, way back in the
Way
day.
back then.
We're not talking social media or anything. 20 million readers.
That's like our audience here today.
Well, a little more than that. If you heard the applause.
Not quite.
I have to say, if you heard the applause.
Yeah.
So before I let you go, obviously you have a great interest in history, in politics, being a former UPI bureau chief. What's next? Are you writing another book about politics? I mean, this is obviously something that's a passion of yours.
I'm looking for something a little more personal next time. I'm looking at a book about Reconstruction era and race relations, because my great-grandfather was a member of the Ku Klux Klan, I discovered in some history. And there was one time in American history when the Grant administration cracked down on the Ku Klux Klan after the Civil War. And there were these trials. And the interesting thing about these trials is the juries were made up of freed slaves. And it's a remarkable story about justice and civic duty, and these people who had every reason to just make this a kangaroo court and get retribution against these torment of freedmen and freedwomen, and yet they took their responsibilities very seriously. So I think it's a wonderful civics lesson in an age when we're kind of losing some of our civic fabric. And so I'm going to go back into a whole different era. I've never written much about Reconstruction.
I love this.
That's great.
Scott, when people want to find your book, just check it out on Amazon. How can people look up Inga? I think it's a great Christmas gift, frankly. I really do. I'm going to get it for my
I would
husband.
emphasize
Will you
that.
get me
I
a
think
copy?
anybody on your list would like it. It's got enough of history and espionage and romance that anybody on your list will love it. And you can get it at any local bookstore or through any store online like Amazon, and you can get it in any format. There's an audiobook out, there's an ebook out. So I hope people do consider it as a Christmas gift. It's a wonderful story.
Thank you so much, Scott, for being on, and we'll have you on again soon. Have a great holiday.
Thank you, Deborah. You and Ken, too. Thank you. Happy New Year and Merry Christmas, and thank you for the time.
Thank you so much.
Happy, Scott.
Is this not my God, the applause is like super loud today.
I
It
love
must
it.
be like the applause.
It gets me juiced.
The applause sign must be on steroids, like in
Huge.
capital letters here today.
Uber.
So that is fascinating, though, isn't it? I mean, I have to tell you, when my producer came to me with it, and she goes, "Look, he's on a tour. This is one of the only times we can get him." I said, "Go ahead, put him in, book him in." I thought he was really a fascinating guy.
I love stories like this that have
I
not
know you
been
do.
told. And
I
I told
know.
a story about William Wellman, a great Hollywood director. No one knew about it. Everybody knew about Wilder and Wyler, but Wellman had no idea. These nuggets are so worth telling if you can find them, and that's when you get huge response like he's getting for his book.
And it's like the story you told. Same thing.
Yeah.
It's a story that people don't know about. The Heart of Nuba. We are here talking to producer, writer, The Heart of Nuba, Ken Carlson, a very, very close friend of mine. I'm really honored to have you in the studio today.
It's an honor.
My husband, John, a lot of people know him, talk show host. Is he on the line right now? Did he call in?
I believe he is.
John, are you there? Hello. What are we doing with the phones today? Jonathan? All right, if you're not there, call back. Can we try and get him on the line?
Sure.
Because I'm pretty sure that he's called in. Maybe we're having some kind of difficulties. We watched the movie over the weekend, and you know, John, it's real hard to get a tear out of that guy.
Love John.
He was
Stoic.
so moved. He
That's
could
great.
barely speak and breathe. Now, if he's there, he can verify this. Are you on the phone? Well, if you have his number, let's try and get him a call. Or Misty, if you can hear me, let's try and get him a call. I want to know. Let's back it up a little bit. You and I have been friends for quite some time. I consider you an adventurer. I mean, you're someone who travels. You're involved in so many different things. But you're a writer. You're a producer. This movie follows someone that you went to college with.
Correct.
His name is,
Dr. Tom Catina.
and you played football with him, correct?
We were on the same defensive line at Brown University. So he was a nose guard and I was a defensive end. So we were together for 4 years, and we graduated in 1986 from Brown.
And that type of thing really bonds you forever.
Forever.
Right? And you heard about his story. How did you hear about that he is over there doing this great work for the people of Sudan in the small village of Nuba? How did you hear about it?
I'd been keeping, I've been in touch with Tom for years, but I always had this idea it would be great to go out and make a film about his life and what he was doing. But it never really came together until he won an award back in New York City. He was an all Ivy player, so they wanted to award him years later, which they do. And I thought, this is a perfect time. He's coming back to the United States because he lives there, and he doesn't want to come back to the United States.
He lives in Nuba, you're saying,
He lives
yeah.
in Nuba, lives in the southern part of Sudan, in southern Kordofan. And I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to reach out to him and say, hey, have you ever thought about a film being done about you, about the conflict in Sudan? And he readily declined.
He did.
Oh, yeah. No,
Because
that's
you
Tom.
know what?
He's
Those kinds of people do that.
Yes.
He's there doing the work because he believes in it. Why don't you very briefly set up the film that he works at the hospital there? What is it called?
It's called Mother of Mercy Hospital.
Mother of Mercy
That's right,
Hospital.
yeah.
Now he didn't build the hospital.
He did not build it.
He went to work at the hospital.
Well, he was the first doctor there, and he is the administrator of the hospital. He's the manager. He is all in. And there's one doctor for approximately 1 million people in the southern part of Sudan in the area called the Nuba Mountains.
And what's going on there? It's an area.
war-torn.
It's war-torn, but their own people are killing them.
That's right.
The dictator, the man who leads this nation, wants those people out of the region because it's an area rich with minerals and all sorts of things. So he's literally dropping bombs in that region to just annihilate these people.
That's right.
Among other things. He
That's
also
right.
believes they are too black. Is that correct too?
Correct, yes.
That's horrifying
They're
to
not
me.
pure. They don't practice a pure Muslim religion, so they are in fact inferior and worth eradicating.
So this man's
responsible for Darfur. We all know about Darfur, and we went through that, years ago. And he's turned his focus on the Nuba Mountains and on the Blue Nile State, and he's relentless. He believes that these people should be eliminated, eradicated, and the land should be his. Now, in all fairness, the land is in Sudan, and that is he is the leader of, the president of Sudan. But in a comprehensive peace agreement that took place in 2005, this part of the world was awarded to South Sudan, essentially. And so when South Sudan did not get their way, when the Nuba Mountains and the Blue Nile District did not get their way, essentially they were not annexed, they were upset about it, and they rebelled against
the government.
The government.
The government was upset, right? And they just decided they're upset about it. They're just going to annihilate the people there.
Yeah. So they said there's one way to deal with these people. They're a nuisance to us. Let's get rid of them. So they have ground offensives. They drop bombs relentlessly on these people.
And we're going to show some clips as well in a moment. However, I did want to go to John because John of the John and Ken Show just wanted to call in and just give you a couple of, I don't know, what he thought of the film. He loved it. He was actually supposed to be here today but couldn't. Are you on? Can we hear you? John?
We have someone on the phone here.
But he can't hear us.
It's Bonnie. Bonnie's on the phone.
Bonnie's on the phone. What happened to John? Oh, well, Bonnie, we're going to get to you in a moment, too, and thank you for calling
problem.
in. But do you mind if we play a clip now? Of
Love it. Yeah,
clip,
please,
and I
please
believe
do.
we may just play out the trailer, and I think it's over 2 minutes, so I'll tell you maybe when to cut out of it. But basically what we're seeing is the trailer is actually also really well done.
Thank you.
And it builds the trailer. So he can talk over it, right?
Yeah, he can talk over it. We have it queued up for the end part of the film right now with the planes.
Okay, that's fine.
Why don't we do that?
Okay, go ahead. Thank you for cutting that. Thank you.
You feel like a hunted animal, the terror that you feel, so vulnerable and exposed.
Hopefully one day I'll stop remembering the feeling. But it comes all the time.
Why on earth would someone bomb a hospital? Why? They want to kill Dr. Tom? Why? What has he done to them?
You know what? Do you have the trailer nearby?
Which is right behind my house.
I don't have the trailer, unfortunately.
You don't have the trailer?
No, I just got this video.
Okay.
Essentially, what we're seeing here, though, is this part of the film takes place right after the bombing, and the government went so far as to target.
That's the doctor right there.
Trees are blown off.
They targeted the hospital,
Leaves.
which we know
So
is
you can imagine if it hit here, I think they were probably targeting.
a rather heinous.
They were aiming for
Can
my
you back
house,
it up
they
a little?
just missed it.
Yeah.
Why don't you back it up? We did give the trailer. I don't know what happened to it, but I'm pretty sure that we sent that in. And Misty, if you can hear me, maybe we could send it again. But I wanted to really show and illustrate what these people go through.
This is him returning from the United States, so probably not a great piece to show.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure why the trailer isn't up here, but we sent that
good.
in.
I mean, essentially, what we're seeing here is a government essentially killing off its own. I mean, its residents. And we postulate, where else in the world can you bomb your own citizens, your own residents, and it makes no one's wire. I mean, we all know about Aleppo. We all know about some of these, atrocities that are taking place, as we should. But this has been taking place for essentially decades, and most people have no idea that it's going on.
What's a shame is these things happen in so many places, and without somebody like you who's and the good doctor. But the good doctor is there doing his good silent work. He doesn't even, as you said, he didn't even want a film done on him. So basically, he's doing his work quietly, but it's someone like you who goes in there and exposes the atrocities that's going on in these countries where they're actually trying to take out their own, that's really shedding light on to the world on how things need to change. And it's not the only place where these types of things are happening. Should we get Bonnie on the line right now?
Yeah, sure, that'd be great.
Bonnie?
Hello, Bonnie?
Okay. Of all the days to have technical difficulties, is Bonnie there?
She's connected right now.
Bonnie?
I'll set it up if we get her. Bonnie, essentially.
Can you hear me?
Oh, there she
Now
is.
we can hear you. Thank you so much
Sorry,
for being
I was,
here.
No, not
And
at
I'd
all.
like
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So we're talking about the atrocities that have been going on in this country, and your involvement in this film, The Heart of Nuba. Why don't you set that up for us? How you became involved with Ken?
Okay. A company called Swell Creative, that I work very closely with, contacted me and said that they have this really powerful film about the genocide in the Nuba Mountains. And I'd spent years at Amnesty International, so of course, I'd been working on the issue of the genocide in the Nuba Mountains and genocide in Darfur. And I said, absolutely, I wanted to see it. And I was really blown away by it. And I've been running social impact campaigns since 2000 on human rights and social justice projects. And I knew that this movie would be embraced by the human rights community and could be used to try and re-engage the public on the issue and try and bring pressure to bear so that governments could do more on the issue of the genocide in the Nuba Mountains. It's just such a powerful film. And I was right, because when I reached out to human rights colleagues, they immediately responded and knew that this film could be used to raise more awareness and to mobilize.
And so far, where has this film been seen? Because I know that you've been pretty much everywhere trying to get the film out there.
Yes.
Where have you guys been so far showing this film, and what have people been saying about this? I mean, and can they change anything or no? Because they can't just go into this.
Can we change? Absolutely. Absolutely. Can we make a difference? Absolutely. And that's what we're postulating. We can make a difference, especially if we are a collective force. And that's what we've done.
That's
We've
the goal.
created this coalition, Bonnie spearheading it, and we are putting together key NGOs such as Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch and Broken Silence, Project Broken Silence, and Project Enough, and we have and Act for Sudan, and we've created now this large coalition. I mean, I think Bonnie, correct me if I'm wrong, it's one of the largest coalitions that's in existence for human rights, correct?
Yes, what we did is we assembled a coalition of over 80 NGOs behind this film. And what we decided to do, the strategy behind it, is for Human Rights Day, which was December 10th, and Genocide Prevention Day, which is December 9th, we decided that what we would do is we would encourage our NGO partners, we would give them the film and say to them, screen it around the world and use your calls to action to mobilize. And we had tremendous success with that. The very first screening that we had, which was November 28th, actually, was at The Hague. Mm-hmm. International Justice Project, that's part of the Act for Sudan Coalition, screened it at The Hague. And interestingly, they told us that it was the only time at that gathering of NGOs, of justices at the International Criminal Court at The Hague, that was the only time that Sudan was discussed.
Which is a shame.
And they screened the film, which is remarkable,
yeah.
Since Omar al-Bashir is an indicted war criminal. And so it was a great success there because it allowed for that discussion to happen. There were a number of people in the room that did not know about Dr. Catina. And so it re-energized that group. Then we followed up with screenings. Amnesty International hosted screenings at a number of its regional conferences. They also hosted a screening in Vancouver for Human Rights Day. They had a 24-hour write-a-thon, which they do every year, and they showed the film during that write-a-thon.
I believe now. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry. No. Well, just quickly, we screened it at the House of Lords. The mayor of Paris partnered with Human Rights Watch and the Magsama Project to screen it there. We had Act for Sudan partners screening it in Rome. We had 3 screenings in Sudan. We also had one scheduled in Uganda, and 30 minutes before that NGO was ready to screen the movie, the police showed up. This was in Kampala.
And they raided
and the screening.
Incredible.
And stopped the screening, saying that they didn't have the right permits from the police department to host the screening. They never needed permits from the police department before to have any screening. So, we even said to them, look, we're very concerned. We don't want in any way to endanger members of the organization, but they were determined to have another screening and have now gone back to get that permit. So as Ken said, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, Enough Project, Jewish World Watch hosted the screening in Los Angeles, and 70 organizations under the umbrella of Act for Sudan, which has really been terrific in getting the word out. And the response has just been tremendous. People really want to use this film on the advocacy side. And I don't know if Ken mentioned or not, but there's also a very important screening in D.C. that was hosted by Representative McGovern Capuano and the Lantos Human Rights Commission.
You said that happened or it's happening?
Happened, yeah.
Yes, it happened. No, it happened in
December
D.C.
6th.
And I'll let Ken talk about that because he was there and had several high-level meetings.
You'll stay on with me, right? Because I really do want to show the trailer.
Absolutely,
I think
yes.
It's a great trailer, and at this point, I think we should show the whole thing. It's about 2.5 minutes, right?
Let's show the whole film.
Huh?
It's only 85 minutes.
It's only 85 minutes. Let me tell you, we're about to watch it a second and third time. We're having screenings in my own house.
Love
but
it.
Kurt, thank
Love
you
it.
for getting that for us. I appreciate
Yay,
it, love.
Kurt.
And let's get going. And you can talk over it if we would. Would you please?
Life
Why
is
ruin it?
valuable, and we can't lose sight of that, or else we lose our humanity.
That's how they live in foxholes, these poor kids.
The Nuba are unique.
They are very loving people. And
They're beautiful people.
Gorgeous.
Catholics, Protestants, Muslim, and they live in harmony.
All religions in
so
harmony,
true.
right?
Bashir thinks that black is an inferior race. He doesn't care for the people.
The government is decided really to exterminate these people.
I am ready to die here, in my homeland here.
It is not the book that makes you civilized.
My number one concern is that the hospital will be bombed someday.
Turn that around, Augustine.
And there's your friend that you played football with.
Dr.
I think
Tom
there's a
Catina.
shot of it.
Dr. Tom, he's the
235
gynecologist
pounds at
who's
Brown,
the
135
surgeon,
now.
he's everything.
at Brown University.
There he is.
He was an All-American, and he was strong.
Tough
all
as a
get
pine
out.
knot.
Come on, 3-0 Chromic, let's go.
So Tom now, he's like a magician.
He knows he's the last line of defense.
It's quite stressful knowing that the chances of a really good outcome are not great. Come on, there's so many complications that can happen.
What I need is this bag here, these scrubs, and those books, and a bit of alcohol.
The way I look at it, I can try my best.
He has a
That's all I can
genuine
do.
love for the people.
There's a lot of fighting relatively close to us.
So we were all requested by the bishop to leave.
We cannot guarantee you that will get you out
He's
of there.
living on the
I
front
think
lines.
that's a plane, so I think we have to move
He
now.
knows no other way to live his
We
life.
cannot protect you anymore.
Why do we have to listen to a criminal regime that bombs and kills its own people?
Its own people.
If the Blessed Mother and our Father in heaven do not protect him,
Down, down.
there's no protection.
If I left, some people would die. So even if we got shelled,
That shot. That
let
shot.
me stick it out with these guys. I'm in it. I'm all in.
Okay. That is so moving. Kurt, what did you think? Isn't it incredible?
That
And
shocking.
now, not that I'm looking at you like a hero here, but you're a
I
guy
am
living.
certainly not.
You're a guy living in Los Angeles, and you're on the front lines making this film because you felt that it was important enough to be told, so that we can get it out there to the Human Rights Watch and everyone else, and get people involved, Bonnie involved, and other people to get the word out. So,
Yeah.
what was that like being there?
Being in Sudan itself is we had a saying that it was calm until it was not. It's absolutely beautiful, and the people live in harmony, and there's this sense of complacency, like, wow, this is, it's heaven on earth. It's just so beautiful there. But then you hear an Antonov flying overhead. Then you hear a Sukhoi come in and shell, and it just rattles you, and you realize that this is no way to live your life. These kids live in fear. This entire community lives in fear. It's just wrong. I mean, it's hard enough to get by with all the diseases that are there, with a poor rainy season. There's famine, there's starvation, and these people have to deal with a relentless, maniacal, genocidal a dictator of a leader. And he's raining terror upon them like you cannot believe. So
Ken and Bonnie, what can be done, though? Now, this film's getting out there, and it's getting notoriety and attention. If this dictator is insisting on continuing this, what can be done?
Well, that's the big question. That's the
That's
million-dollar
the big question.
And
can other nations get involved, or people just take a back seat and
well,
say,
that's
well,
it's a very complicated issue.
I know it
It's
is,
a
and we
very
know that.
complicated issue.
I
We've got
know.
the superpowers involved, with China owning the oil rights, and Russia is providing hardware, a lot of the weaponry. So that's a very complicated, high level,
Meanwhile-
above my pay grade. But it's
above all of us. Meanwhile, we've got these people stuck in the middle, and your friend, who I'm not even necessarily sure why he was so motivated to be there. Obviously, he felt for them. But did he go on a trip there and say, "Oh my gosh, this is
No.
horrible," or he read about it?
That's
How did
his
he get there?
humanitarian heart. He was like that in college. He always did, to others. He was always the most selfless individual on our team, and I think in my circle of friends. I mean,
Well-
we were all curious what Tom Catina was going to do back then, and it does not surprise me in the least that he is doing what he's doing, because that is his philanthropic, his humanitarian heart, and it's hard to believe that I know somebody so well, somebody in my life that is so close to being a saint. I mean, it's and he doesn't act like a saint. He doesn't want to be known as a saint. He doesn't want any of the accolades, any of the attention. That's why he said no to the film initially. But the fact is that no one else would or probably could do what he's doing.
I am looking at an article here. It says he's been compared to Jesus Christ. Time magazine did refer to him as a saint, and the Catholic Digest has proclaimed him a hero. And he's all of that, really.
He's all of that.
He's incredible, because without him, these people can't live.
He provides hope.
And by the way, and he's everybody's doctor. He's the gynecologist.
He's
the
everything.
guy you go to when your leg got blown off.
He
He's
does it
screwing
all.
together a broken leg and mending the bone. It was shocking to watch everything that he did, and with the very little tools that he had available to him.
Very rudimentary. And then at the end of the day...
Incredible.
At the end of the day, I was there, I witnessed 17 cases. I'm talking about cases in the OR that are very tricky, like 3 amputations, okay? Then he had lacerations he had to deal with. Then he had to deal with a DNC. Then he had to take shrapnel out of a woman's eye.
On any given day.
17 cases. Then he walks back to the compound where he lived, and he gets a ladder out, goes up and cleans off the solar panels so they could have electricity the next day so he could operate. So he runs everything. He is a one-man show. He has a lot of people helping him. The Nuba people are supporting him, but ultimately the buck stops with Tom Catina. We say he's the last line of defense.
And it also says the dictator, they know where this hospital is.
Oh, they know.
But
they have the coordinates.
But they're leaving it alone.
Yeah.
Thank God. Thank God. Right,
they're leaving it
alone.
alone.
If I may,
please,
sorry, if I may, and I really think it would be important, addressing your question of what can be done, and Ken talk about his high-level meetings in D.C. But I would just like to read the first paragraph. Act for Sudan, which is the coalition that we're working with, issued a statement on December 8th, ahead of Genocide Prevention Day and ahead of Human Rights Day. And I'll just read you the paragraph. It's very short. Said, Act for Sudan calls on President-elect Trump to take advantage of the unique opportunity of the start of his new administration to dramatically change the dynamics and effectiveness of U.S. policy in Sudan by implementing a strong policy to end the government-sponsored violence in Sudan, protect civilians, ensure unhindered humanitarian access for those in need, and bring the perpetrators of genocide and mass atrocities to justice at the International Criminal Court.
Let me ask you this. Go ahead, Bonnie.
And one of the things that people don't understand is what Bashir has not allowed is a humanitarian corridor,
right,
whereby aid can come in, medical aid can come in. That's why it has to be snuck in, and that's one of the key elements that they're asking for. Allow for this humanitarian corridor.
That's right.
Which of course
a very simple thing that is provided around the world. But
right.
Not here in this
under international
part.
law. That's right.
That's right.
What has been done under Obama, and what's your hope that can be done under Trump?
Unfortunately, not a lot has been done through the Obama administration. So we're hopeful for the Trump administration. Somehow, some way, during Republican administrations, Africa is more on the front of front burner, and so there's more emphasis on relations with Africa. So we're hoping that that's all we can do.
Has this been presented to Obama? I'm sure it has. This story, I mean, he knows.
No, we don't. We've gotten it up to a point, and we know that he's aware of it. But we were hoping to get a screening with him at the White House, and that hasn't happened. And certainly,
send it to him as a Christmas
gift.
We're
running out of days.
Send it to him as a Christmas gift and see what he does as a Hail Mary, last minute Hail Mary.
Probably won't open it.
Bonnie, your hope moving forward with this, because and other work that you're doing that you can sort of group together to bring awareness to all this.
Well, my hope is that this movie is seen as widely as possible, and our coalition of NGOs, that's exactly what they want. In fact, we received a request the other day from an NGO wanting to screen it in 100 cities. And it should be seen by governments around the world, and we're hoping that the new administration sees it. And you just asked about, the Obama administration. Well, Act for Sudan believes that part of the problem, although the Obama administration has frequently expressed grave concerns, but he has pursued this policy of engagement and employing conciliatory diplomacy rather than really confronting the regime in Sudan with consequences for genocide and crimes against humanity, not just in the Nuba Mountains, but in Darfur.
Right.
So it is my hope that we as the public are mobilized behind this, and we in the United States, American citizens, pressure the new administration. And there is certainly interest in Congress to use this film. And I'll let Ken talk. I think this is critically important.
What do you mean there's
that
interest?
Ken mentioned about... Yeah, and Ken, if you could talk about what Congressman McGovern said.
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge push right now for there's certain congressmen that are just absolutely absorbed by this and have been backing this for a long time. Jim McGovern is one of them, House rep out of Massachusetts, and he has been arrested 3 times.
Remarkable man.
Remarkable.
He's a terrific guy.
Protesting in front of the Sudanese embassy, and George Clooney was with him at one of these particular protests. He is pushing hard for the sanctions to be rewritten and make them even tighter on Bashir. They want to have a big screening back in D.C., another one where we get both House and Senate involved. He is at the forefront of this movement, and he's not going to take no from an answer. So I love his passion about. He introduced me for the film, for the screening of the film in Washington D.C. Earlier this month, and House Rep Capuano. Michael Capuano, and the two of them together, I think, are going to make a formidable team and push this legislation across and get awareness where we need it to be. But it's not easy. I'm telling you right now, it's not easy.
Yeah.
There's a lot of conflicts, and we need people like Bonnie. We need people like
you need everybody.
We need everybody
it's a
to
thread. You just have to, and you just link it. You know, some are bigger than others, and you just keep going and you link it. But how many other places? How many other nations? Where else is this happening? And I'm not talking about The Good Doctor. I'm talking about these kinds of atrocities where people are turning on their own. It's happened throughout history. But how many other places, Bonnie, you would know this in particular, where it's happening and people just don't know about it?
Well, I mean, in the Congo, the Democratic Republic of Congo.
And Rwanda is well known
for.
for.
It's a horror show. Sorry?
Rwanda. It's a perfect example of.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, there have been so many genocides and mass atrocities, in all of these decades. But, I mean, there's so many places around the world where there are those mass human rights violations. And when you go to Amnesty International's website, go to Human Rights Watch's website, you see what they're trying to do to address all this. And this is why a film like The Heart of Nuba is so critically important. I ran the campaign on Hotel Rwanda. And that movie did so much to educate people who didn't know about the genocide in Rwanda, and using it at the time to raise awareness about the ethnic cleansing campaign that was occurring in Darfur, which, has been a full-blown genocide for years.
One thing about... Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. No.
One thing about this film that was particularly moving, and I know you do this, you tend to like to do films that are close to your own heart. And that came through in this film, because I was going to say to you, what about doing this type of work, this type of film in other areas? You mentioned Congo, Uganda. Would you go there to perhaps expose what's going on there as a filmmaker and a writer? Or because you don't necessarily have that personal connection, you prefer to just sort of stay with what you know? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's almost like a collection of films that can be done and presented.
Unfortunately,
out there.
I could be employed. I could be busy for the rest of my life
doing
these very kind of
because
stories.
This is so moving and so potent, and you were so good at
But
exposing
the key to it is thank you. The key to it is Tom Catina. The key is
and
this man's passion, and he is the through line. He's the narrative, and the only reason I have access to him is because of our history together. But he is beyond anything I've ever come across, and so that's what makes this story special. Because he takes us through this and he personalizes it, so we then there's jeopardy. We are engaged. We are attracted to this man and want to root for him, and so he's truly a hero, which is I think we kind of have fallen away from in our movie making, in our storytelling. We like to expose the evil underbelly of stories, and so this is a true hero, and he happens to be an American that is in
a foreign place.
But the beauty of it is he is, as he says in the trailer, he says, I am all in. He is now married to a Nubian woman, a nurse in the hospital. He has no plans to ever leave. This man is there and as connected to this community. So it's not a great white knight that's coming in, or the white man's burden. This man is there for the long haul and doing great work. And I know there are other people that are doing this kind of work there, and the Nubian people are doing this similar kind of work, but it's just we can't relate to them as easily. They're not as good of a narrative for me to tell because I didn't know them, but now they are, and we are telling their stories as well. They're phenomenal people.
Well, what he said, to quote him in the film, everybody's life is valuable, and we can't lose sight of that. And you feel that from him. I often say, if we could just all peel back our skin, and I wouldn't know what color you are, and you wouldn't know what color I am, and the dictator there wouldn't know who's darker than the next guy. If we could just peel it back, because underneath we're all the same people.
That's right.
And if we could begin to start to look at life that way and people that way, a lot of us can't.
Right.
But
and
so many of us can.
He truly
I know
feels
he
that
does.
way. All life holds the promise of hope. And he represents hope in that area to so many people because he does it selflessly. No need for bright lights or big city, no need for attention, no desire to have a film made. But he knew that this was a vehicle to get it to create awareness and put it on the international world stage.
And he has a very supportive go ahead. Wait, hang on, Bonnie. He has a very supportive family as well. I know in part of the film he went back to his family, I think, for the holidays.
That's right.
And they accept what he does. They support what he does.
They're so proud
They
of him.
are so proud of what he does.
That's the only time during the filmmaking process that I actually cried. I actually wept when I put together that particular scene.
See the film,
you know,
family.
and I've literally, you have to kind of, you have to compartmentalize when you go out into a situation, into an environment such as Sudan. You have to kind of say, you know what, I've got to have tough skin. I'm going to see a lot. I've got to be rough and tumble.
Because I have a story to tell.
I have to tell a story,
out.
and I can't. But when I saw the family, the situation
His father.
that he was leaving, he was sacrificing greatly. I mean, the most incredible family. I mean, strong Catholic family. The mother and father are still alive, love him, and all his brothers and sisters
and
are
nieces
alive,
and nephews,
and they've got and they love him. And so, a lot of times you find people running from things, they're broken. Tom is, as together as you get, and his family is loving and supportive, and that's the beauty of it. And that really, I got caught up in the thought that he is missing all of this. That's the great sacrifice from here.
He is, and then he's not, because he knows that he's doing this for something really great. And these people are his family. And just the fact that he married a woman from there, it's really in his heart.
Well, his father says so eloquently, he says, he has nothing, yet he has everything. And it's so true.
And I really believe if we can get anything out of that, he has nothing, but he has everything. As you go into the holidays and we're all trying to rush around and figure it out, do we really need anything? Because to have everything is to, in a way, have nothing and just give something back.
That's right.
The original reason for the holidays, and I'm going to get to you, Bonnie, I swear, but, is to give something.
Right.
But does it have to be something that we go to the mall and purchase? Do you know? I mean, to give just something small of yourself. I mean, I challenge everybody just to do that. And then you can go to the mall afterwards. How about that? You can spend all your money there, but give something that costs nothing. That's
what Tom Catina does.
He does it all day.
And that's what we say, find a little bit of Tom
in
you.
Well, I like that. That should have been your Christmas card. I always look forward to your Christmas cards every year. I didn't get it yet, by the way, and I've been looking in the mail.
Oh, it's out. Bonnie, you received yours, so you had...
Mine's probably in the mail.
You should have received it by now, because you're at the top of the list.
I know I am at the top of the list.
You get it every year.
I know. Well, I'll let you know. But that should have been
your...
Out.
You threw it out.
I would never do that. You're one of my closest. But that's true. That's your mantra that should have been on your card. Bonnie, getting back to you and all the good work you're doing.
Let me just tell you something about Bonnie. She was responsible for, along with Swell Creative Group, responsible for The Hunting Ground. The film that your son and my son had to see it, I think, 3 times.
At school.
At school. I mean, it was mandatory.
So
they put together that campaign, and that's one of the reasons why I followed them and I seeked them out.
And that's how you found them.
Yeah, because they're the best at the game. Swell Creative Group, and Bonnie, Philip Holmes owns the company, but Bonnie is brought in these particular cases for her advocacy.
Bonnie, I'm interested.
Well, we want to be able to move the needle. We want to be able to move the needle on this issue and really mobilize the global public, which is what it's going to take. And you asked about current genocide. Look what's happening in Syria. Bashar al-Assad is killing his own people. It's a genocide against his own people. And he needs to face war crimes charges. He needs to be brought before the ICC. And when we had a screening in Los Angeles, the Jewish World Watch hosted, there were 2 people in the screening room, who were Syria activists, and they said, look, this is such an important film, and it resonated with them. And they talked about the role of the white helmets and the other, brave doctors who were there, and they were so inspired by Dr. Catina. And they said, look, we need these kind of brave filmmakers to talk about what's happening in Syria, because of the genocide against our own people.
I should put I should put you in touch with a friend of mine, and she's down in Orange County, and she was reading up so much about what was going on in Syria and about the kids. These kids are just walking for miles and miles and miles, and they have nothing. And she was so moved and motivated. It takes people like that, people like Tom, people like Tom, where she started something in Orange County, collecting backpacks, crayons, all kinds of stuff. And she got the money together, and she went over there. And now a couple of times a year, she goes there, and they just have stations, And as the kids and the people are coming through, they stop and they give the kids a ball. It's like crayons because
means the world.
It's everything. It gets
means
them
the world
through.
to
Imagine
them.
being a child. But I mean, it's people like that who see something and say, I'm not just going to watch it. I'm going to do something about it.
right.
And now
That's
she
right.
goes there 3-4 times a year. But I ought to put you in touch with her because she'd
That'd be wonderful.
Yeah, I think she'd
Yeah.
be someone you enjoy talking to. But so people are watching the films, the word's getting out there. But how can the governments infiltrate and do something? As you said, that's the hard part.
That's the $1 million question. That's
It's
the
$1 million
tough part.
question, but then how do you get the $1 million to do that?
Yeah.
I mean, as innocent as that question sounds, can it? Can you?
Well, we're raising money right now for this cause and for Dr. Tom and for the hospital. So that's where it starts, so they can actually be on the front lines and be more effective. But it's got to be higher level than that. And so we need our government to be involved. We need the sanctions to continue. But we have to break Bashir down. We have to somehow reach his heart, and that is what we're trying to do.
Reach his heart? Have you seen the man? He's dropping bombs on these people. How do you reach this man's heart?
I agree, but hopefully
Or
we'll
his
put
ego.
enough pressure on him by making this film, by getting this film out there. There'll be enough pressure that he'll say, you know what, there's another cause.
And he's supposed to be viewing this, isn't he?
He's supposed to be viewing it this week.
You know, a guy like him, you have to appeal not to his heart, because if he has one, but his ego, and to say, oops, I don't think I want to go down looking like this,
Yeah.
right?
True.
It's more the ego you got to reach.
Yeah.
Bonnie?
But governments can step in and work to increase economic pressure on Sudan unilaterally and multilaterally. Thereby strengthening, U.S. sanctions. We need to support the movement in Sudan for true democratic transformation. We need to support the groups on the ground in Sudan that are trying to accomplish that. And it is key, and this is where public pressure can really come to bear as well with the other governments to create that humanitarian corridor so that aid can get in. So people ask, what they can do. You can go to the Act for Sudan website. You can go to the
Can you give us
go to
those?
Enough Project.
You can go to theheartofnuba.com.
You can go to enoughproject.org. You can go to hrw.org, actforsudan.org, amnestyinternational.org.
Why don't we start a campaign on...
They offer ways at which the public can be involved, and again, bring the kind of pressure to bear on not only here in the United States with our representatives, but globally, and we see that with the kind of high-level screenings there were in the House of Lords.
Yeah, that was incredible.
And from these screenings have come many
mayor
others.
Of Paris,
but what about
in the Senate in Rome? I mean, so people, people can't forget what is happening in Sudan. It was so much about Syria and our worries about terrorism, and there's just so much happening in the world, so many horrors everywhere, that people have forgotten about Darfur and about what's happening in the Nuba Mountains. Not the NGOs; they're consistently working on that. But that's why this movie's so critically important, to remind people: look, this is what's happening. It's been happening, continues to happen. The global conscience has to come into play here, and we have to do something.
Okay, so Bonnie, what's the social media? Has there been a whole social media outcry where people are, tweeting about it, writing about it? Have you been tweeting about it a lot? Because that I think has been really super effective.
We're on the front end of that.
You're on the front end
of
it.
Gathering steam. We've got momentum.
That's what Swell is doing with the Heart of Nuba website, and we've engaged all our partners, and that's exactly what we did between December 1st and December 10th, which we called Human Rights Week, and we activated around the world.
Yeah.
So I would encourage people
need,
to get on that Twitter account and start tweeting about it and retweeting about it,
That's right.
because that's so important. Now, for people who aren't going to be able to go to a screening, how can they get a hold of the movie? Just your average guy who's interested in getting involved in his own community.
That's the next level. I think we're getting closer and closer to getting Hollywood to respond to this. I mean, it's been a tough sell, initially, because it's got many facets of a film that isn't in many minds marketable. I mean, it's about a conflict that we have forgotten.
I found it marketable, to be honest with you. It held my attention.
I'm just saying but what we've done is we've skipped over that step, and we've put it in front of the public. We've gone to all over the world and screened this and said, this is something you need to be aware of, and you need to stand up and make a stance. And that's what's happening. People are responding now to that.
And I have to give credit to Ken, because it's always tricky when you're discussing with distributors about buying your film, but it was so critically important to Ken, and real kudos to him because he cares about his friend, he cares about the people in the Nuba Mountains, that he said, I know I'm risking here with some distributors, but we've got to get this movie out there and give it to the NGOs. And they fully embraced it. In fact, Jewish World Watch was saying, let's just start a petition, that get people signed and say, we need to see the heart of Nuba. So, credit to Ken because it was a risky move, but, he did it for all the right reasons. And now I think that we can go back and say, we've got the numbers here. We have not only a built-in audience, but an audience of human rights groups that are going to network out to their individual networks.
How about the museum? How about the Museum of Tolerance here in Los Angeles? Have you contacted them? I'm sure
they
you have.
They have seen the film, and the response.
Great to have a screening there.
The response from them was, I fell to my knees and I wept when I saw your film. So we are working with them, and
they're terrific.
Yep, they're good people.
Yep.
Bonnie, thank you very much for
Yay,
being
Bonnie.
on with us. I am
absolutely
moved by
Bonnie's a rock
everything
star.
about this film, by Dr. Tom, by you, Ken, by you, Bonnie, just everyone who's involved because they care about the people there and surrounded by this good doctor who's doing such amazing work.
He's doing amazing work. So go to the website, theheartofnuba.com.
The Heart, and that's HEART of Nuba, NUBA.com.
And you can find ways you can help. One of the biggest ways is to donate and to support what Dr. Tom is doing and the hospital. And there's a big donate button, and there's a peer-to-peer campaign where we're actually raising funds and creating a fundraising experience for other people so they can get on board and they can reach out. And, it's the whole coalition effect, and it's the momentum that we're trying to create. It is.
It's a challenge I'm going to give people, though, for the holiday. I really do mean that. As you go and buy your stuff online and at the mall, just do one small thing that will matter to somebody else. Go to heartofnuba.com. Why not? I mean, it's a beautiful film.
Thank you.
You've seen the trailer. If there are ways for people to actually access the film online, you said that your next step, that would be terrific.
Thank you.
So thank you for doing that now. And Bonnie, I'm going to have to probably let you go. Do we have the pastor on right now?
No problem.
Yeah, we can transfer
him
him
on because we're going to.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you so much for being here. We'll talk to you again. I look forward to talking to you and meeting you too. Thank you. She was amazing.
She's great people.
I have another question though.
Maria Shriver's she actually
name.
Really cares.
I know she does. I can hear it in her voice.
Maria cares.
But Maria Shriver's name is attached to this. Now there's some star power.
She's executive producer.
She's exec producer. Yeah. So how can she get the word out there?
She has been getting the word out. She just made Tom Catina an architect of change, and she promoted that heavily just to bring awareness to him. And we have other things that she is going to do, and so she's very active.
So you say getting the word out there. She's such a terrific. I mean, she's terrific
amazing.
To get it out there. She gets involved in a project and something happens with it.
That's right.
So, and same with you, Ken Carlson. I think what you've done to bring this attention is incredible. And just before we sort of finish up today, we have a pastor friend on, and I just sort of like to get his words on going into the new year and any blessing he wants to give, regardless of what your religion
I could use a
is.
Blessing.
Well, wait, your dad, who's a pastor, right? He's in the green room watching.
That's
this.
nepotism, though.
I know. So we have the good pastor on. Are you there, Pastor?
He just hung up.
Oh no!
He had to listen to all of that.
I know.
And then he finally
I am so sorry, Pastor Aaron Kerr with the Mariners Church in Irvine.
Why don't we have my father? My father can come in and give a good.
And my producer Misty was good enough to get him on, and I'm so sorry we let him hanging. I didn't realize he was even there until about a minute or two ago. So my apologies to the pastor, Misty, if you can let him know. I don't know. Today we're having some communication issues, but that's okay. That's the way things go, right?
It's the frenetic
I'd love to get Dad in here, but that would be a little funny, right? By the time we get him in here, we'd have to go.
Okay. No, that's okay.
No, that's okay. All right, Ken Carlson, thank you for being in here. Any other parting words before we let you go?
Well, I just want to thank you for having me on. And the bottom line is there are people out there that are doing incredible works, and you have it within you to do similar things. It may not be to go to medical school. It may not be to find yourself in a hospital in southern part of Sudan and perform incredible surgeries. But there's something that you can do. You can have a little bit of Dr. Tom Catina in you. So I put that on your heart. I lay that on your heart to find that, especially this time of the year, that you could be a blessing to somebody else. It's not all about you.
And please, especially if you're going through a super hard time, That I find sometimes is the number one way to just get out there and give something to somebody else, because then you'll feel a little better about it, and then just pay it forward. So that's what we have to say to you moving into the holiday season. Everybody, thanks for being here. Ken Carlson,
My
Bonnie,
pleasure.
and everybody else. Thanks for being on with Kobylt and Friends. We'll see you next week.
Thank you, Deborah.